Hi, it's Michael Cooper. I'm with the Private to IPO Partnership Network, and we are taking a look at and listening to CEOs who are leading their companies from the private sphere to an exit strategy. These are companies that are top-notch, gold standard in their industries, and know what it takes to grow their company to a successful exit. Today, I'd like to welcome Dr. James Friedrich, who is a founder and leader of Native Traits, a leading company in natural trait genetics and the development of robust corn seeds. And Native Traits has developed a platform and some resulting product types that will make consumers and farmers much happier with the corn and vegetables that they are consuming and growing. And they are looking forward to building their company, leveraging the investments that they have brought into the company to date, and expanding their product line along different food groups. Dr. Friedrich, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your professional background before getting involved with Native Traits and what led you here?
My professional background actually started at a very young age. I grew up on a farm in central Missouri and went to the university there at Missouri and received my PhD later at the University of Wisconsin. But my first job in industry was back with Allied Corporation in the early 1980s, and it was after that I formed the first of my entrepreneurial ventures, which was then later sold in 1999. And then I started, for a period of time, I did some consulting, but then I eventually started this company in 2012. There had been sort of a forerunner company where I was doing some consulting, but Native Traits Corporation was formed in 2012.
And the company that you sold previously, was it in a similar area? What industry was that company in?
It was somewhat similar. We had a much different technology, but the program utilized material that can be obtained from the States Department of Agriculture, from the seed bank that they have. They have many of them, but the one for hybrid seed corn, or I shouldn't say hybrid, but for corn, is in Ames, Iowa. And there's a collection there of over 22,000 strains of corn from around the world, most of which have never been used in the hybrid seed corn industry. And so these kind of ancient strains, ancestral strains, whatever you might call them, would include things like Indian corn and tropical corn and corn from Canada and corn from Africa, Eastern Europe, you name it. So that was the one similarity between the current company, Native Traits, and that former company.
Okay.
It's the same starting material. We just did it a little bit differently.
So you've got an extensive history in this area, plenty of relationships built up, and a successful track record. So you start Native Traits, and you built a platform for selecting and choosing various traits. Can you tell us about the platform?
That's a very good question. That's our core competency is a technology which we call NT recovery, in other words, native trait recovery. The difficulty with all these strains of corn that the USDA has, kept in their archives, so to speak, is that they're very, very difficult to use for commercial purposes. The ancient Indian corn that Native Americans would have grown and the colonists would have seen when they were first arrived in the United States would not be well suited for the intensive agricultural production of the modern day. So the NT recovery program That technology basically gives us a way of effectively screening these different strains of corn and finding traits of interest, as you might expect under the management conditions of people in the 1800s and so forth. Those farmers would not have had access to fertilizer to any extent, and no irrigation properly. So those strains of corn were fairly well adapted to a pretty rough life. Mm-hmm. And the difficulty, of course, is identifying the traits that you want in this kind of a mess that's not well adapted for commercial use, and then transferring those traits, basically transferring the genes to a modern commercial line. That's what NT Recovery does.
So by doing that, when you set out your objectives on what you want to see out of certain strains, you set an objective, a vision as to the conditions you want to see, and then go into NT Recovery, identify all the sources and what the combinations are that will get you there, and does that develop a new product line for you?
That's a fair summary. We go a little bit further than that, in that most of the traits in fact, almost all of the traits of interest, like drought tolerance or cold tolerance, are the result of several different genes. And so to transfer those genes in mass from one, ancestral strain to a modern commercial line is not a trivial thing. Once we have identified the trait using NT Recovery, we then use molecular markers, and this is not genetic engineering or anything like that, but molecular markers are basically DNA fingerprints, much like would be used in forensics or paternity testing or something like that, which allows us to track the presence of those particular genes that we've identified and move them effectively and very efficiently from one line to the next. And it's that sort of technology, the whole package of traits and the genes that confer those traits, plus the molecular markers for those genes, that is what we offer to a potential licensee, a potential customer, like a Monsanto or a Syngenta.
After you have patented the traits, correct?
That is correct. We are very quick to, our attorneys are very quick to remind us to patent things as we discover them. So we are building a patent portfolio. We've also patented the NT Recovery technology itself, because that is basically the fundamental platform of the company.
So one of the products that has come out is Easy, and it's available for licensing. What kind of clients are you talking with on those licensing deals, and have you come to any conclusions on licensing deals?
We have three companies, because of the confidentiality agreements that we sign with the companies who can't disclose their names. These companies are pretty secretive about these things until they're ready to actually take it to the market and sell seed to the farmer. But in this developmental stage, we have three companies that have come aboard, and we are basically in talks with all the usual suspects, large and small companies. There's really no one that we would not consider a potential customer, except potentially for some companies that might be operating in third world economies. And those are a little more difficult to approach, just because of issues relating to intellectual property, which we're always concerned about, and just the general marketing into those third world areas. The problem, and of course this is where the Bill Gates Foundation does such a marvelous job, the problem with third world countries is that the technology is needed, but there's no one who can afford to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And so for a company like Native Traits, that presents a real problem.
I can see how that would be a problem, but good on Bill Gates for helping provide at least an alternative path.
That's correct. That's correct. And as those economies develop, all the major seed companies have a presence in places like Africa or India. India's not really a developing economy anymore, but all these other economies, the major seed themselves. Eastern Europe would be another example. To the extent that the politics allow it, they are certainly positioning themselves for what might come in the future.
Hmm. And your licensing deals, they involve obviously royalties on the back end. Is there front end development work that's got to be done that they also pay for?
That is correct. Basically, the front end development work is somewhat funded by us. It depends on the company and the deal, and they vary from one to the next. But the front end development costs are shared by us and the licensee, and then of course they pay us a royalty, on the back end as well.
But you're quite advanced in the process, having
That is correct.
three deals is fantastic within 4 years. Where did the funding come from to start the company, and how have you been funding the company over the last 4 years?
When we founded the company, the main purpose was to provide enough funds so we could really accelerate the development process, including the development of molecular markers, and also get the intellectual property in place, the patents. And the company or the organization that came forward and has been really very, very strong in their support for us is the Biosciences Research and Commercialization Center, which is an arm of Western Michigan University here in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
You can find them on the web. They have supported quite a few pharmaceutical-type companies and a couple of agricultural companies, which we are one of them. And with them, not only do they provide money, but they provide tremendous credibility just by virtue of their willingness to vouch for us. And then we've gone out and with the help of a couple of major angel investor organizations, we secured the funding that we needed. Northern Michigan Angels is probably the main one.
Okay.
That has put in quite a bit of money.
That was a Series A round?
That is correct, and we have just launched the Series B round,
Okay.
Which will probably include some of the same angel groups as well as other companies and potential venture capital type companies as well.
Excellent. Where does the company go from here? Obviously, more licensing deals are in the works. Development of new products. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, our goal is to be the premier native trait developer in the hybrid seed corn space. And particularly with the easy trait, we have found that companies that are interested in other types of crop species have an interest in what we do because there is a scientific concept known as synteny, S-Y-N-T-E-N-Y, that basically says that a lot of the genetic sequences that you find in one species are also present in other species. So a crop like corn, which is a grass, might have the same genes. If you can find a particular gene or set of genes in corn, it is likely to also to exist in rice, which is a major crop, a member of the grass family, or sorghum, which is another member of the grass family. Or you could take even a larger leap and go into something like the beans, like soybeans, which is a major crop, and potentially find the same genes there. So what corn does, besides being a very profitable business in and of itself, it's kind of like it gives us a window to what we might find in these other crop species, and we're now broadening our market and working with other companies that are in those other types of crops. So we want to be, again, the premier native traits developer for corn and then expand from there. And the traits of interest are drought and cold tolerance and also simply hybrid yield. What is unusual is that we find that we can usually improve not only resistance to drought, but basic yieldability in and of itself, basic yield potential. So all this is very good.
Some of the yield enhancement I saw in some of your numbers, I think they were boosting yields something like 4% over the benchmark.
Right. That would be for just basic hybrid yield potential under non-stress conditions. Under stress conditions, we usually do much better than that. We can boost yield 10 or 20%, depending on how severe the stress is. So what oftentimes happens, and this has been a problem for our competitors, is that they are very successful in developing a genetic trait that makes corn yield under drought conditions, but that same corn doesn't yield terribly well under normal growing conditions. So it's not a very attractive proposition for the farmer because he knows he's not going to have drought every year anyhow. So he wants to have it both ways, and our products tend to provide that to him.
And in the early days of today, that is just a key differentiator for you, isn't it?
That is correct. You know, these days, I mean, the agriculture economy has changed a lot in the last couple of years. It's in somewhat of a downturn. Margins are very, very low. For farmers, they probably don't exist at all most years because commodity prices have fallen to such a low level. So any kind of technology that enhances the farmer's likelihood of having a successful crop is very valuable.
That sounds very exciting, Dr. Friedrich. We want to continue to follow you and see how Native Traits develops, and I really appreciate your time today.
You're certainly welcome, and don't hesitate to contact me if you need any more information.
I will.
We're on the web, so to speak.
Yes, and we'll be getting you up on the site.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, bye now.
Bye-bye.